welcome into the Hoist the Colors podcast. We are live on a Monday night. Steve and I go here, Jonathan Wagner there, and some dude out in Vegas chilling poolside, Scott Lorebatcher. Vegas Scott Lorebatcher, as it says.
What's up,
He's having
fellas?
he's having the best time of all of us by far. How's Vegas, man?
It's been awesome. The the Saturday game, I went to the poolside bar and I ordered, and I looked to my right and I see the East Carolina Pirates on the television at the bar, and I was like, "Well, this is perfect." And that was also the only game that we played that was worth watching. So, pretty worthwhile experience there because that was the only game that I got to see any part of. So, good for me.
Yeah, that Saturday game was pretty lit, and that was about it. But man, we all kind of wish we were in your shoes right now. As JPN says, how professional of Scott. Well, yeah, this is not a professional show, so thanks for tuning in. Jonathan Wagner is in his lovely room with the same picture and backdrop he's had for 14 years now. Wags, how's it going?
Yeah, I told you before it went live that the viewers were going to give me crap for that now, but I guess you just had to jump the gun. But I'm doing good. I was unfortunately I was in Greenville for that disaster on Friday, so I have been banned from Clark LeClaire Stadium. Some people thought that my tweet saying that was real. I have not actually been banned, but I probably should be at this rate. But hey, tomorrow night my backdrop will be not as cool as Scott's still, but I will be in house for the Lenovo Center to watch the Canes close out the Devils. So I'll have that going for me at least. So there's that. But there's not a whole lot of good to talk about on the baseball front, that's for sure.
Yeah, Rollercoaster Season Continues. We'll get into the overall thoughts on the series here in a minute. I do want to say, first off, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Also, we have finally, after years of trying, have been granted the permission to be a YouTube partner through the Hoist the Colors YouTube channel. So we are able to monetize these videos. We've launched super chats. So if you go on our YouTube page and you pull up the live chat, you can click the little money icon. You show your support for Hoist the Colors. You can super chat or super sticker, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel like doing. Give any amounts of funds to the podcast. What we're going to do is, look, Scott and Wags don't get paid for this. And so anything we get through that, I'll give to Scott and Wags. We'll split. We're not asking for donations, but hey, if you just feel like supporting the podcast, do that. Also, I can't figure out how to do it, but what I was going to do was launch it so that if you chimed in tonight with the super chat, you would enter a raffle to get a free 6-month subscription to Hoist the Colors. So I'm going to look into how to set that up for next week. Now, if you go ahead and super chat tonight, doesn't matter the amount, just super chat. I will enter you into next week's raffle, and then I'll pick a winner via random system. 6 months free on Hoist the Colors. So stay tuned for that. So we've made it, boys. We're big time.
For sure. It's only $23.84 for a pina colada here, so we could use the super chats for that.
Scott Lorebatcher needs several super chats right away. Please fund the super chat. But if you got any questions, guys, let me know. Obviously, if you're watching on X or Facebook, you have to go to YouTube to do that. But excited about that. All right. Overall thoughts on the week. ECU loses the series 2 out of 3. We'll start with Scott Lorebatcher. He's going to be with us about 10 minutes before we let him go. Scott, your overall thoughts from what you were able to see or follow.
Yeah, I watched all the post-game interviews, read the box scores. It's just disappointing to come out and then once again get punched in the mouth at home. For it to happen once against FAU is one thing, but for it to be Tulane, a team that really should be a revenge series for how well they played against us the last 3 or 4 years, and to have them come in here and just really smack us in the mouth, and good for Colby Rasmussen, to have his moment. But really bad for us. And as far as any sort of hope of winning the conference championship or even really competing for it, it kind of feels like those hopes are dashed. And to once again not get any length out of our starters, it's just disappointing to be at this point in the season and not have figured it out. I know Cliff said after one of the games that we had 2 starters that were injured, but you haven't had them all year. And if you haven't had them all year, you didn't have starters, right? So I think the time for excuses is over. I think it's the time for reflection and to figure out whether you want to get it done here at East Carolina or take the Mississippi State job that just opened up.
Yeah, we'll get into that discussion. Cliff Godwin has already turned down Mississippi State once in his career. Now, that was like 7 years ago, so much different situation now. We'll discuss that throughout at some point later in the show. Wags, your overall thoughts on the weekend? 3 out of 4 series losses now for ECU.
Yeah, it's just disappointing because, it's weird being in the position we are that, the Tuesday game against State is probably ultimately a good thing at the time because weekends are all that really matter right now because you need to win the conference. So that game gets canceled, and it kind of feels like, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. You rest your guys, you rest your arms, you get off your feet a little bit, and you just didn't take advantage of it. You went on Friday and you embarrassed yourselves in front of everyone in one of the worst performances ever in this program. And it just sucks, too, because of the storylines coming from it. Before the game, I was like, man, I'm excited to see Brad Pruitt, get his Friday night shot because when he committed to us, he was one of those guys where I said, I think, that's his potential. His potential is being a Friday night guy. And he got the shot, and it didn't go very well. And I'm not giving up on him yet, but it was disappointing for sure. And then guys like Riley Johnson, he's back in the lineup. And it was so cool, hearing the crowd for when he was announcing the starting lineup for the game, when he went to the plate for the first time. And Riley Johnson was back, and he played all 3 games. Saturday, he had a really good game. And vintage Riley Johnson was back. He was making plays in the outfield. He was making plays on the base paths. And it just feels like he got overshadowed by the embarrassment of the other 2 days. And, Dixon had a really good weekend, which was nice to see. We've been kind of waiting on him to get going. And he did get going this weekend. But, again, it just feels like it got overshadowed by the disappointment everywhere else. So it really sucks. And it's one of those weekends that does kind of make you look in the mirror a little bit. And I think question, is what we're doing working? And if not, how do we get it back on track? And I think that's a question that goes beyond the rest of the season.
Yeah, we're starting to get into and I don't blame fans for doing this, and I think we can even do some of this tonight, like the big picture stuff, because the conference championship realistically out of the picture. We'll look more into the standings now, but East Carolina with 9 conference games left is 5 back of UTSA, which swept Memphis, and now down to 6th place, technically speaking, because they've lost to FAU and Tulane. They're tied with those teams in the standings, but 6th place if it started today. And you still have to play UTSA, and you've got to play USF and Wichita. We've struggled in Wichita. So, there's a lot there's a lot going on there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a disappointing weekend because I really felt like Saturday would be a turning point, but I just think we're kind of at the point now where this team, I've said along, it is what it is, but a lot of it is the youth and the inexperience. Like with a young team, you get ups and downs, and maybe they can get hot at the right time. I launched a poll on YouTube. Do you have faith that you can make a run in the conference tournament? We've got 60% yes, 40% no. Scott, before we let you go, are you seeing enough right now to where this team can make a run at that time, or are you not seeing it?
I just don't see enough pitching depth-wise to make it through that many games. And then on the other side of things, our bats haven't been completely consistent either. But I just don't see how we can go to a 4th game and not give up 14, 15 runs at this point. And if you do that, you have to score runs in bunches. And that's not really the way Cliff Godwin offenses have worked over the years. Scoring more than 10 or more than 12 runs has kind of been an exception, not the norm for us. So I just don't see enough pitching depth right now. And maybe we can use these next few weeks to find some, to give guys opportunity to give you length. Gabe Beschloss is a good example of a guy that I think maybe should get more opportunities to give you 2 or 3 innings, because if you don't have that in the conference tournament, you're not going to win it.
All right, so Wags and I are gonna do our predictions at the end of the show on the week ahead. Now, do we know your bold prediction? Did we ever figure it out,
I,
Scott?
I tried to go back and listen to it earlier, and I couldn't get the time right on it. So I don't. I feel like it was like Dixon Williams 2 home runs or something like that, but I don't remember what it was.
Okay. Well, Dixon had a pretty good weekend. Now, you didn't predict Dixon to get thrown out twice at home, did you?
I did not. I should have. It should have been obvious.
But we'll review the tape, so you may have got that right. Now, Wags and I both hit on ours, I believe. I had the Jack Herring home run, which cashed on Sunday. And Wags, what was yours again? Remind us.
I had a Riley Johnson stolen base.
Yep.
That also cashed on Saturday.
Now, he cashed it, but he also just kind of like walked into second because he was trying to draw a throw. But, hey, it counts. So we'll get your prediction before we let you go. Week ahead at Elon, at Wichita State for 3, and then any bold prediction.
Yeah, I'll go 2-2. I think we win at Elon. I don't think they're very good, and I think we can kind of just manhandle them. And then Wichita has been a house of horrors for us for every time we've been there. Hopefully the bats show up. If they don't, it's probably 0-3. But if the bats do show up, I think it's still 1-2. And I think my bold prediction, I'll go Ethan Norby makes an appearance in all 3 weekend games.
All right.
I like it.
That would be tough. That'll be tough, but hey, it's not unheard of. Danny Bill has done that many a time. And then Brandon Carr says, "Dang, Scott, we going streaking up to the quad or what?" So
we're just out here in this pool, pretty solo actually right now. But might be time to go get another pina colada or two. We'll figure out where the night takes us from there.
Hit those super chats and support this guy, Scott Lorbatcher. Hey, Scott, we appreciate you, man, for taking some time out of your vacation and time out in Vegas. So appreciate it, dude. We'll let you get back to it, man.
Yeah, for sure. A lady on the way out here gave me a go Pirates as I walked by the pool. So there are some other Pirates out here. I was wearing my Hoist the Color shirt, actually, at that point. So she recognized the brand. But you guys have fun. Hopefully I'll come back to next week. We'll have a more happy podcast for me to return from my home office to.
Brand recognition in Vegas. That's what it's all about, baby. Appreciate you, Scott.
Yeah. Take it easy, fellas.
Later, man. All right, there he is. Now
I just want to say, I think it's funny that he took the Hoist the Color shirt off to start the podcast.
That is pretty hilarious. I'm sure. I don't know if I believe in that we were recognized out in Vegas, but I'll take it. All right, we're back to our boring selves, and man, he brought such energy to the show. I don't know how we're going to keep this going, but plenty to discuss in some ways. In some ways, not. I guess we'll start off, Wags, by looking at the conference standings and just kind of like, is there any hope? I mean, ECU is not mathematically eliminated, so like I said going into this stretch, I was like, ECU had to go 7-2 against Tulane, UAB, and Wichita. Well, they are now 3-3, so that is out the window. I mean, if they sweep Wichita and sweep UTSA, maybe they like have a shot, but the odds of that are slim. So, is it just all about seeding at this point? I mean, you're only 2 games out of second place, so like you have a lot of seeding to fight for, but at the same time, it's starting to look extremely unrealistic.
Yeah, I'm at the point that when you started to ask this question, I started to pull up another tab to pull up the standings, and I just stopped myself because I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter.
But the simple fact for me is that I just don't think this team is very good. And it sucks, but, like you say, it is what it is at this point. And when the pitching's good, the batting is not. And when the batting is good, the pitching's not. And more often than not, neither is on at the same time. And that's the most frustrating part. But, yeah, I think you're at the point to where you're in a little bit of a mix to where you need to kind of see what you have for next year with some of these guys, because I think there are some guys that we talked about that you build around for next year. You have some of those building blocks in place. But I think you also have some guys that are playing roles right now that are the opposite, that you don't know if that's one of those guys that you want, especially if the roster limit comes. So I think you're in a mix between trying to balance that and figure out what you're going to do for next year. But also, you said earlier on your show, this team's not going to wave the white flag and throw in the towel. They're going to try to win every game. And if that means throwing Ethan Norby 3 times a week, like Scott predicted, then I think that's something they're going to do. And they're going to try to win. And they're not going to just start experimenting with them stuff for next year because this year's not over yet. That's just not how they're wired. And it's not how they should be wired. So, but yeah, that didn't really answer your question at all. But at this point, but in the same way, I think it did, because I think the race is over. And at this point, you're going to finish where you finish in the conference tournament. I don't think you're going to win it anyways. And that's just the harsh reality to me. It sucks, but to me, that's where this team is.
I mean, realistically, you could go 8-1 over the last 9 and still not win the conference. So, I mean, like, and the odds of them honestly, if I had to, if I was an odds maker in Vegas, I would definitely say ECU is probably still the favorite to win the Wichita series. Wichita has not been good, but it's not a series you would expect to sweep. You could easily lose the series. And then ECU is going to be a clear underdog against UTSA. Even at home, UTSA a much better team. And then at USF, I would say USF's the favorite as well. Even with the first-year coach. Like, they are a better team right now. So, yeah, I don't know. We usually do what we learn, Wags. Like, I mean, what I learned this week is you can't win a series if you don't have a starting pitcher go more than like 2 innings. I guess, Jenkins did pitch into the 4th or 5th. But at the same time, like, you're in game 3 at that point. Your bullpen's pretty much toast. So, did you learn anything specifically? I mean, I kind of already knew that. So,
yeah, I mean the pitching. Maybe we learned this weekend that all year long we've early in the year we debated is Norby a starter, is Pruitt, is Young a starter potentially, and this weekend we saw Pruitt and Young both start, and neither were very good. Norby was really good out of the bullpen, but Norby had not been very good the past couple weeks in the rotation. And so maybe we learned that this team has 0 starters. But again, it's one of those things that I still think that Norby's best role is in the bullpen, and I think we saw that this weekend. But yeah, other than that, I think maybe we learn, and it's not really something new, but I think we learned just how much this team did miss Riley Johnson, and he's not fully healthy. He's far from 100%, but he's out there giving it his all. And even on Friday in that disaster of a game, we saw Riley go out and beat an infield single, beat it out. His speed was on display, and he ended up coming out at that point. But then on Saturday, we saw Riley Johnson again. He came through. He got hits. He made plays in the outfield, like I said earlier. And, he got a vintage, crazy stolen base to get my bold prediction. And I'll take it how it comes. But I think we saw that when Riley Johnson's healthy, when he's in that 2-hole up in the top of the lineup, first of all, it lengthens your lineup. I love the lineup configuration this week with Burris in the leadoff spot, Riley Johnson 2, and then you have Colby 3, or I guess Jack Herring was 3, and Jack Herring had a heck of a weekend too. You had Colby Wallace 4, Dixon Williams 5. I loved that. So, yeah, again, it's not something we really learned. It's just I think it was really emphasized this weekend how much this team did miss Riley, and it's a shame.
It is crazy. You went to 8-9 days in between games, and the first game back you give up 20 runs. Like, you should have fresh arms, but I know ECU did not throw its top arms, but even if you're not throwing your top arms, you shouldn't give up a 20 spot. So, yeah, it's just been frustrating, man. Look, everybody over there is frustrated. We'll get into more of the big picture later. Let's get into some of these comments. JPN1212 says, why do we never play well versus Tulane? Well, this, I think I read, is the first series loss for ECU at home against Tulane since 2012. Now, in New Orleans has been tricky. But I feel like until last year, ECU had played pretty well against Tulane. Look, Tulane's a good baseball program. I know they've been down in recent memory. The losses before that had mainly come in the conference tournament. where Tulane just seemed to get hot under Jay Ullman. But I don't know. Like, I mean, it's just one of those things. Tulane, they're good. They have tradition. They probably expect to come to ECU and win. Anything you put your hat on here or finger on, Wags?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, but I mean, this is not related to ECU at all. Well, it is, but I think maybe the reason is that I was there on Friday, and this was going to come up at some point. I'm just going to get in front
Yeah,
of it.
you're the worst, by the way.
I'm going to address it right now. But I have been to 5 games this season. And I was there on opening day in the press box. They split it. Obviously, they lost the first game, and they squeaked by in the second game. And then I was in Durham against UNC, lost 2-0. And of course, the other game I was at was the Coastal Carolina game. It had a very similar feeling to the start of the game on Friday, where you give up some runs in the first, and then you just never get back into it, and you lose 9-1. And then I was here on Friday. So maybe I'm the problem. I've seen a lot of ECU wins in my day in Clark Clare Stadium, but I think maybe this is showing, earlier in the season, you and Philip made a prediction on how many appearances I would make in the press box this year. And, I think deep down, I knew that I was a problem, and I didn't come, but it didn't help. So it sucks.
Wags is the culprit. Do you know what your run differential is on the season? Can you tally that up for me?
Let's see.
You tally it up while I answer some of these questions. How about that?
Cool.
All right, JPN 1212 says, I think it's a pipe dream to be any higher than 6th in the conference tournament. We were talking about that earlier. He adds, our best chance in the tourney is to finish 6th and not face Gillespie for Charlotte in round 1. Ideally, Charlotte and Tulane finish 4-5. We get USF and FAU in the 2-3 games. Well, FAU's got an ace as well, Trey Beard. So to me, there's no easy first-round game in this league, but Gillespie definitely one you want to avoid if possible. Wags, do you have that run differential?
41-13.
Wow, so that is minus 28.
It's terrible.
Good job.
I can't believe they scored 20 runs. And
yeah,
that was one of the most pitiful.
The Nats gave up 19 tonight. How you feeling?
Well, the worst part about that is I have Brandon Nimmo on my fantasy team, but since he was hitting 190 coming into the day, I left him on the bench because I have some outfielders. And he went, last I checked, 4 for 5 with 2 homers, and he drove in 9 runs. So first matchup of the week is not going very well for me. So everything's just going wrong.
Baseball can be like that sometime. While we're on MLB, what's up with Alec Burleson, by the way? He hasn't started, I feel like, in 5 days. So
he's just letting Zach Agnos have his
Oliver Marmol, whatever his name is, got to be the worst manager in the big leagues. So I feel like he always is trying to shaft Burley. Give the man some ABs, man. All right, let's keep going. Anyone going to the road games this week? You going out to Wichita, Wags?
Absolutely not. I'll actually be at a wedding this weekend, so I won't be watching much anyways.
I will not be at Elon. I've never been to Latham Park. Don't really have any desire to go. And that's about it. I'm definitely sure as hell not going to Wichita to watch Wichita State, East Carolina baseball this season.
The real question is, are you buying Flow Sports to watch the game tomorrow night?
No. If you're watching our podcast, or if you're watching our YouTube, you can see my first word there. I'm trying to keep it clean this week.
You don't want to click explicit this time.
Yeah, I don't want to click explicit on the upload. I'm not giving Flow Sports a dime. I'm done with them. I will listen to Dill Johnson and Coach O on the call, though. Pirates need to get a win tomorrow night. All right, JPN says, would Ryan Towers or Brett Antolik pitch this year, or would they just take a medical redshirt? We asked Cliff Godwin earlier today on the 94.3 The Game show. Cliff said Ryan Towers probably a few weeks away. Sounds like Antolik unlikely. With Towers, I guess you leave it up to Towers. Does he want to pitch? I mean, the thing is, if he's in his junior year, correct?
I believe that's correct.
I mean, the problem is I need to look back and see if Towers pitches this year. I'm looking at his. Yep, he would. He pitched in 23 and he pitched in 24. If Towers pitches this year, he would lose his medical red shirt, a year of eligibility, and potentially his leverage unless he tries to go pro after this year, which obviously would not be an ideal scenario. So I just don't know unless he really wants to pitch for the team. If you put him in that out there in that situation, that ultimately is up to Towers. And Tolick, I don't think is going to pitch. Any thoughts, Wags, on Towers? To me, it seems unlikely he would pitch, but you never know.
Yeah, I think you said it perfect. I think ultimately it's up to him. And if he does get healthy and he gets to a point where he can pitch, I don't think it'll happen during the regular season. But I think it's one of those things where if you get into a conference tournament and you're playing a fourth or fifth game, and that's a tough spot for him too. But it's one of those things. If he's ready and you kind of need someone, and who knows, why not throw him out there, see what he can give you, and maybe that's one of those things that gives you a boost. And again, we're going to have to win the conference tournament to make the NCAA tournament this year, and winning the conference tournament, as we've said, is not going to be easy. I don't trust the bats or the pitching right now to carry you as deep as you need to go. But, again, he's not going to come out and throw 6 shutout innings in his first game back of the season. But if he can go out and give you an inning or two and in a spot where you need it and give you some confidence, both in him and in your situation in the game, then who knows? And I wouldn't rule it out. But yeah, I think it makes sense for him to just kind of hold off and get healthy, focus the full offseason on rehab and getting back to full strength and coming back next year and taking your role then.
All right. Kason Ramaley, I don't know if he's stroking out in the comment section or what, but he says, I'll FTU the whole game, Steven. Are you saying you'll fight me the whole game? Are you going to cover for us the whole game? Kaysen is now in the Elon area-ish. So please clarify what you're saying, Kaysen.
He's saying he'll FaceTime you.
FaceTime.
Instead of paying for Flow Sports, he's not going to fight you.
FaceTime. FT. I guess I'm not up with the times, man.
I guess you're too old for this.
I'm too old. I mean, I know what FaceTime is, but I've never been like, yo, let me FT you, bro, during the game. I got you, Kaysen. He'll FaceTime me the whole game. You got to hit that. Maybe if you would have hit the capital FT. Come on, man. I thought you were a writer, Kaysen. What are you doing? Pirate Pulse has dropped in. He says, ECU sweeps this week. Yes, I have been sipping on a few cocktails. Are you in Vegas with Scott Lorbatcher? Paying for those $23.94 pina coladas? Sounds expensive. All right. Let's get into some more of these comments. Cameron says, what are the odds Cliff Godwin is in a Mississippi State uniform coaching next year? So Chris Lamonis, that's his name, right? Fired today. Won a national championship with the Bulldogs. So before Chris Lamonis was hired, the former AD at Mississippi State, John Cohen, showed up on Cliff Godwin's doorstep trying to hire him. Cliff Godwin at that time turned down the job. He was fresh off a host regional year for the Pirates. This was a long time ago, 7 years, long time ago, whatever happened, whatever year it was. Lamonis went there, won the championship, been very, honestly, like more bad years than good years. A lot has changed since then, Wags. I personally, for several reasons, I don't see Cliff Godwin going out on this note. Now, will Cliff Godwin be interested in Mississippi State this time around? Will he talk to them? If I was Cliff Godwin, I would use this opportunity, assuming Mississippi State is interested in him, to leverage as much as possible ECU to put revenue share into my program or NIL, like try to get something out of it. With the way college sports is heading, you can call that greedy, but I just say you're trying to do what's best for your program in that situation. The other factor is he's an Ole Miss guy. Mississippi State is an Ole Miss rival, and I just don't see it. But I've been wrong before, could be wrong again. And I don't think we'll get any clarification on this a while, Wags. But your take on Cliff potentially, I'm sure he'll be listed as a candidate, but potentially being a candidate for Mississippi State.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. And, for Mississippi State, it's, and Chris Lemonis in his first 2 years, his first year, he was the College World Series runner-up. And his second year, a second actual year, because his true second year was the COVID year where there wasn't a tournament. But his second full year, he won the College World Series. But since then, they're 118-98 overall. And in SEC play, they are 42-69. So almost 30 games under 500 in SEC play since you won it all. So I get the sense that, they commit a lot to baseball too. And I just think they're going to swing big. And as much as, I do respect what Cliff Godwin has done at ECU, I don't see him being very high on the list this time around, just given kind of where everything is. But yeah, I do think that you're going to see him at least, on all these hot boards that come out. He's probably not going to be 1, 2, or 3. There are some other guys that I think they're going to go after. But, Cliff Godwin, I wouldn't be surprised if, on a couple lists, he makes an appearance or he's kind of an honorable mention type guy as a fallback type option. But yeah, I agree. It's a perfect opportunity to kind of, like you said, push for some revenue sharing and benefit to this program. And, we've been in a situation before where his name's getting floated for jobs that he's not necessarily a real candidate for. So you got to make the most of it. And it's kind of the perfect offseason for something like that, to make the most of something and, try to get some more money flowing in, because I think it's an offseason where you probably need to spend a little more money.
Yeah, Pirates got to figure out the right way to operate in this environment going forward. And I've heard, and look, I mean, people got to understand, and I know that like people want me or Patrick Johnson to pepper Cliff with these like hard questions. First off, Cliff Godwin comes on that show voluntarily. He doesn't have to do it. He takes so I'm not gonna like I asked him about Dixon stealing or trying to take home twice a day. I'm not gonna like ask Cliff why his team sucks so much. Like, I mean, that's just not how like you do the job. Secondly, like if you want to talk big picture with Cliff, he's not going to do it in season. He's not going to say, look, we got to upgrade the roster because our guys aren't good enough. He's not going to throw in the white towel in the middle of the season. Like, that's just not his style. So I could ask those questions. He would say, let's talk about it in the offseason. But for us doing this show, there's a clear need to upgrade the roster. And this kind of goes with our next question, which is why I bring it up. And what I think it kind of shows ECU is already doing this. Chuck says, I heard we got a junior college commit today. Impressive stats in JUCO. There was some ranking I can't recall where he was the number 2 JUCO. Some of the players are ranked below him, committed to LSU and South Carolina. So ECU gets the commitment of junior college outfitter Jack Vogel, I believe is the pronunciation here, out of Walters State. He is hitting .429, 15 home runs, 18 walks. He has stolen 18 stolen bases. He has struck out less than he's walked on the season. So good bat-to-ball skills. The toughest thing with these JUCOs is you never know the level of competition. It's a big leap to Division I. The other JUCO who has been committed a while is Blade Carver out of Northern Oklahoma, Tonkawa, who is hitting .400 with 21 home runs. He is a catcher/DH. So, I mean, look, those are two, and I'm not going to say they're going to come in and dominate, but those are two of the best junior college bats nationally, Wags, committed to ECU. I would say that they're trying to address the issues by getting on some impact bats, which I think most people would clearly say is a need. So I feel like this kind of shows they're not trying to wait around to develop these guys, which they will do, but they're not going to solely rely on that. And I expect them to hit the portal pretty hard as well. I think this is a sign that's probably coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I alluded to earlier, I've already been looking at the roster for next year and kind of where I think some positions are you need to upgrade. And, I'm not going to get into the whole shortstop conversation that we've had every week, but it is a need, but it's not the only need. I think right now that's probably the headline where everyone's like, oh, we need a shortstop. But, you don't only need a shortstop. You need other spots. And to me, one of the biggest needs is, one, a catcher that you can trust. Because next year, I think if you do trot out Walker Barron for every single game again, it's a mistake. Not anything against Walker Barron, because I do like Walker Barron a lot. But I think you're at the point in the season where at the plate and behind the plate, you're starting to see it kind of wear on him a little bit. So first, I want a catcher that can come in, spell him, and if it's a guy like Carver who can come in and DH, maybe he plays some first base too, then that, if it pans out, obviously, like you said, but that it's one of those guys that has the potential to be like a difference-making addition, and kind of that difference-making addition that we were all begging for coming into this season. They added some guys, but they didn't really add that guy this offseason, and I think he has the potential to be it. Vogel, too. I think the outfield is a big question mark heading into next season, and you have some guys that are okay, but I do think it's possible you see Braden Burris move back to the infield next year, kind of depending on how the configuration shakes out elsewhere. But right now, there's a lot of infielders and not a whole lot of outfielders on the roster. So, Vogel coming in, another big body guy who can hit, I love it. And again, it needs to translate. No offense to Roger Vergara, but he was a JUCO that hit very well in the past, and he came out and he hasn't panned out. So I want to see them get here and how they match up to this level of pitching, like you said. But it does feel like it's kind of a change of direction, and you're getting it early. You're addressing your needs right away. But to me, it doesn't matter if you don't supplement that with more additions later on through the portal, because even if you take those two and you have a couple more, you have your freshman class coming in, I know the roster numbers potentially are dwindling heading into next season, but you need to supplement it with other additions throughout.
And you've got some potential impact bats in the freshman class. And again, it's one of those things you just never know until they get here. Luke Craddock is a right-handed hitter, 6'2", 230 with pop. Jack Strom, an outfielder, left-handed hitter. So, you've got some guys, and we'll see who makes it to campus and who doesn't. JPN 1212 says, sounds like a guy who's going to get drafted, never make it to ECU. And that's a possibility, but we're also talking about a guy who's had one monster junior college year. Most scouts are going to want to see him go to Division I and back this up. Although, maybe a team falls in love and throws a number that he can't turn down. I have not seen enough of him or talked to enough scouts to really know what his actual draft risk is. But typically that's how it works with junior college kids, unless they just have unreal tools. I've heard, too, they got a JUCO infielder commit as well. So, look, they're hitting the transfer market hard. They're not going to be able to – the SEC is really the only team, and it's got to be they're the only teams that spend money in the portal, and this may change some of the revenue sharing. But, there's not as much NIL money in baseball as people think right now, and maybe that changes. So, I think ECU can play in the portal. I think it's more about the access and the access to Omaha, the access to big competition that leads so many people to the SEC and ACC. But I think ECU, if they truly hit the portal, full staff effort, I think they could get some impact guys that we've been asking for, and they just have to do that. And they're going to have to willing to sacrifice probably some incoming freshmen because of the roster crunch. I think the gauge I get, Wags, is it is going to be extremely challenging to make the ECU roster next year because they don't want to be in this situation again. And again, we're talking about next year. Still got a long ways to go. But I think in reality, you've got some guys that are going to be auditioning over this next month to prove why they should stay here and get a chance to develop, because you're going to have a roster crunch in college baseball like never before, and ECU is going to want to upgrade this roster. If not, then we're going to be in for more seasons like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way it should be. If you have a disaster of a season like this has been, then you should be willing to do whatever it takes to make sure it never happens again. And, this weekend, I think that's what really the feeling was. It's like, okay, this is as bad as we all thought it was. And how do you fix it? But I think it's interesting too, the roster crunch, going down from 40 to 34, I believe it is, and that's tough on programs like ECU, who are developmental programs. It's built on those guys that wait their turn, and those guys who don't play a lot as a freshman, but then they step up, and all of a sudden they're one of your key guys, and they're here for 2 years, 3 years, and then by the point they're gone, you have other guys that have done the same thing they have. But I'm interested to see the approach, because you're going to have an opportunity as one of the top mid-major programs, like ECU is, to, some of those SEC teams, ACC teams, Big 12, they're going to be in the same roster crunch. They're going to be down to 34, and you're going to have some of the guys that normally would make those rosters that won't be able to. And I think it could push some of those kind of middling guys, some platoon guys out of those lineups, and which is some of the platoon guys on some of those SEC teams are really good, and guys that would probably upgrade this team. So I think a lot of those teams are going to prioritize, their key guys in the lineup, and then some of their high-profile freshmen coming in, and it might push some of those guys in the middle out. And a team like ECU should, and I'm going to emphasize the should, because I want to see it before I believe it, but they should be in the perfect position to take advantage of that. And but again, it's like I said, this team is built on development and guys doing it the right way, coming into the culture, say what you want to say about it. But for so many years, it's worked and to bring success to the program. But you haven't made it to Omaha. And this year, you're not going to make the NCAA tournament. So I think it's time to look in the mirror, and maybe on that mirror, you have a piece of paper with all the new rules coming down. And you got to look at both of them, and you got to say, all right, it's time to change.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, look, there are teams in the conference that are ahead of ECU right now who have taken impact transfers. And look, ECU, it's not like they haven't tried at all. Ryan, Towers, and Tolick are two good transfers on paper that haven't worked out due to injury, so it doesn't always work. There's a balance ECU has to strike. And, I mean, really, they're not that far away if Wags, they can keep the core of this team together, which I just don't, I don't think we know with the portal. Like, if you could keep Braden Burris, Austin Irby, Brad Pruitt, who is draft eligible age-wise, by the way, Ethan Norby. Ethan Young will be going to the draft. Obviously, Colby Wallace is going to be coming back next year on paper. He will be a junior. Braxton Trammell. Alex Peltier has shown some tools in the outfield. So I'm probably leaving somebody out. But, there's enough there to have and if you supplement that with a good incoming class, you can turn it around quickly. So I've seen people say this is like a multi-year rebuild. I don't see it that way with the, a lot of varying factors in play. All right. Speaking of next year, Chuck says, since you're good friends with Dixon, he's talking to me or you, Wags? Are you
I'm assuming you, since you got him on your show, I guess.
Yeah, Dixon's a great guy. He says, do you know if he's going to come back next year? Look, it's Dixon's draft eligible year. I think we talked about this recently, but he's got, major hit tool with the power, great athlete, good speed. The thing that hurts him is he doesn't really have a position. Talking to scouts, second base is his position, but they would grade him as a average at best second baseman as a pro. I think a lot of scouts want to see him play corner outfield because of his speed. Now, he doesn't have a great arm, which hurts him there, but defense hurts him, bat plays, and he's got good plate discipline, walks more than he strikes out. So I just don't see Dixon Williams coming back next year. A team's going to fall in love with his tools. He may not be a huge pick, but you got to go when you're a junior, Wags, unless you just get peanuts. So I'd be surprised.
Yeah, you've got to go if you're in that position. But, Dixon's one of those guys, I think, that this year, more so than anybody, he's kind of been impacted in a negative way by the lack of impact bats around him. Because, Cliff said it this morning in your interview with him that, every single weekend this season, Dixon's been the guy that opposing teams game plan for. And they find ways to pitch around him. And when they don't, we see him do what he did this weekend. And, he's got the power. He's got the tools. He moves well. He runs well. But yeah, defense is the question. But the bat, I just think the bat is the bat can be good enough for a team to fall in love with, and all it takes is one team. And with there's 30 teams in the league, and I have a hard time believing that not one team is gonna look at him and say, he's worth the risk. Let's take a chance. Let's take him in the middle rounds or something like that. But he's going to get drafted probably, and even if he doesn't, I think he's in a position to where he probably has to go, because what more is he going to prove next year? And even if you bring in some other guys and he has some more protection around him, I just think it's also a big risk. And with such limited defense, I just don't think that risk is worth it for him.
All right, so Cameron said that ECU has not had a top 70 RPI series win this season. When's the last time that happened? And while he asked that, he went and did his own research. He says, so I went back to the schedules. It looks like there has never been a season where ECU has not had a top 70 RPI series win since the RPI came out in 2006. That is a crazy stat, is what Cameron says. And yeah, I mean, I guess the good news is ECU has a shot to do it in a couple weeks here against UTSA. Where's South Florida right now?
I believe they're outside of the top 70 for sure.
Okay.
I think they're in the 80s now. They were not close enough for me to have them on the bubble when I did my field of 64 this morning.
So they're down to 92. What happened to South Florida? They dropped off rock.
At least a game to Memphis, I believe. So I think that alone probably.
Okay, so it looks like they lost a game at Wichita, but yeah, a few weeks ago, they lost 2 out of 3 to Rice, and then they lost a game to Memphis. So that will kill your RPI. All right. We got a question. I thought NCAA ruled against lowering roster limit as to not make the situation worse for portal entries. So that is a good point, Pamela. There's been no official word due to you got this whole house settlement thing. Essentially, the NCAA is trying to work out, I think, House and NCAA, the whole settlement. They're trying to work out what these situations are going to be, which is why there has been no official clarification, which makes all this so stupid. I got another text saying that right now there's no settlement as far as the roster limitations. Now, the rumor was they were going to cut it down to 34, but the judge basically ruled that they want to grandfather in all the roster spots for the current roster players. So, like, the tough thing is, if you're a coach right now, you don't even really know what your roster limit is, Wags. So it's like you kind of have to prepare for both scenarios. I was talking about this with somebody on the football staff. The rule is you're going to go down to 105. Well, the portal closed Friday. So they had to tell guys, hey, if it goes down to 105, you're going to need to be in the portal so you can find a new home. But if we don't have to go down to 105, we could bring you back. So, like, that's the environment we're operating in right now, which is why college sports is stupid and it's unfair. But this is the mess the NCAA has created.
Yeah, and I do think we're going to have a resolution within the next couple of weeks. As far as the roster limit part of it, I think that's kind of the big hiccup right now. But I expect something in the next 2 weeks probably. But yeah, it sucks. For football right now, like you said, the portal's closed now. So it's either guys are going in early just in case, which is a crappy situation, or it's guys are going to get pushed out and guys in the portal aren't going to have a home. And, for baseball, who you're not into the full roster building phase yet, but it's going to put you in a situation to where when this season ends, it goes right into the off season and you have your freshman class committed already. And obviously every year, not every freshman makes it to campus, but this year, especially depending on how this goes down, it could put you in a position to where the roster is not as big as you were hoping it was. And you're potentially either having to tell some freshmen coming in that you're no longer going to be playing here as a freshman like you committed to. And you're going to have some guys on the current roster that might just get squeezed out. And it sucks. But It's all a joke. Everything about it's a joke. The fact that coaches don't know how many players are going to be on the roster for next season when you're actively having to start building your roster for next season is stupid. It should never happen. But I don't know. I don't know what the fix is for the NCAA as a whole, and that's a whole other conversation. But I just hope
4-hour show on that.
I just hope whatever happens, just get it done. Get something done because this is stupid.
The worst part about it is, and John Gilbert has talked about this, ECU athletic director, once they make the ruling, whatever the ruling is by the judge, there's automatically, he's like, basically there's already going to be a ton of lawsuits as soon as the ruling goes through, whether it's Title IX or just other crap going on. So this stuff is, I don't know what the solution is, but it's going to take a long time to work itself out, and it's unfair, but this is the situation. All right, ECU. We all predicted. Did we all predict 2-2 last week? Wags, and then the state game was canceled. So
yeah, that's right. Because I think Scott actually said 2-1 because he predicted a cancellation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was impressive, man. If he would have nailed that, no wonder he's in Vegas. Gosh. Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess we all got our bold prediction, but we all missed. We thought ECU would win the Tulane series. It didn't happen. It was just kind of a weird series, man. This season has just been weird, Wags. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It just felt off.
Every time you think things are going well and kind of improving, they just seem to take a turn for the worst. And then every time you seem to give up on the season, they come out and show you what this team could be. And it's just they've just had trouble sustaining the consistency in every facet of the game. It's sometimes the pitchers are out there and they have that really good stuff, and then you go to the bullpen and you can't find the strike zone. The bats come out in the first inning, they give you 5 innings. Then you go 1, 2, 3 for the next 5. And then you get in a situation to where your pitchers don't show up and you need your defense to show up, and then you boot every easy ground ball hit to you. So it's just everything that's gone wrong can go wrong. And the injuries, are an impact as well.
And, Saturday felt like ECU baseball. Clark LeClaire was rocking. It just seemed like the team fed off the energy. And then, like, Sunday, the crowd tried to will them, and then it didn't happen. And I don't know. Like, I just have a feeling the conference tournament is either going to – like, I feel like the conference tournament, we're either going to see this team dominate and, like, run through and win a championship or go 0-2. Like, no in between. It just feels like it's been that type of season. I don't know. It's just those are kind of the vibes I'm getting. And again, it's not like East Carolina. All this is relative to expectations. Like, ECU is still top 80 in RPI. They're still 25-19, 10-8 in conference. Like, they're not the worst team ever. But it's just like when you talk about as a program, you want to compete and win national championships. Like, when you're not going to make the postseason as an at-large, it's a disappointing season. So I do also want to clarify that. We're not saying like ECU is the worst team ever, but it's just disappointing compared to realistic expectations going into the year. All right. Let's make our prediction. I tell you, we'll wait till Scott's back. We're gonna have the Braden Burris, Jacob Jenkins-Cowart discussion. I still feel like we need a full season sample size out of Braden, but we're getting there. So we want to have a debate on who had the better freshman season. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I also think that might be a conversation. I think the direction it goes probably has an impact, is impacted a lot by the results of the previous week. I think if we had it today, then maybe we're all just kind of, man, screw this season. This season sucks. It's JJC. Yeah, I don't care what Braden Burris is doing. But if we go 4-0 this week and we have this conversation a week from today, then it could be skewed the other way. So maybe it's better suited for an all-season discussion, but at the same time, I think it's a fun thing to talk about in a season that's not been very fun, and it's between two positives, and we haven't had a lot of positives. So, as
Brian Skipper says, it's over. Unfortunately, it's over twice in the comments section, so he's ready to move on with this season. Hey, if Braden Burris leads ECU to a conference championship in the tournament, then it's a it could be a different conversation. So we'll see. I thought we were going to have to bring it up tonight because we need to kill time, and yet here we are rolling in on an hour. So we don't need to do it, and we'll wait for Scott Lorbacher to get back. Lord Batcher. Did I just call him Lorbacher? What am I
You
doing?
did.
That's how I pronounced it in my head before I officially met him. And then it took me several days to get Lord Batcher down over Lorbacher. Anyways, week ahead. Brian Skipper says we aren't going 4-0. Well, Brian, you're just a non-believer, brother. I agree, though. ECU is not going 4-0. We'll go week ahead, and then we'll do bowl predictions. Give me 3-1. I think Pirates beat Elon and then take 2 out of 3 at Wichita. I'm going to go 3-1. Wags.
Yeah, well, I hope Skull Pirate is out there somewhere listening because he always
happened to him,
us.
Man?
I know he's. Can you blame him?
But he should have seen my alternate title for this.
That was great. But he always wants us to disagree, and I'm disagreeing with you. I'm disagreeing with Brian, and I'm going 4-0. Why? It's because I do not think this team is capable of going 4-0. And like I said earlier, it feels like that when this team kind of lays down and dies, those are the weeks where they just out of nowhere, for no reason, they show up the next week and they dominate. And that's what should happen this week. You're against a crappy Elon team and a crappy Wichita State team. The level of crappy ECU team is still higher than those two crappy teams. But I don't know. I wrote down, some notes coming in. Wichita's 8-11 at home, which isn't all that terrible considering their overall record. And I fully expected to go 2-2 when I logged on today to do the podcast. But yeah, I'm going 4-0 because I'm not expecting it. You're not expecting it. Scott's not expecting it. None of us are expecting it. And that just seems to be the kind of weeks where this team proves us wrong.
JPN says we are all down, so obviously we're going 4-0 2-1 rules following Wags' lead. Brian Skipper says there are 0 signs of life. Hopefully no signs of lice as well. That would be terrible.
We are traveling to Wichita, so would it surprise you?
Yeah. The last time ECU traveled to Wichita, what did they
their
went to
bats
Dallas?
Got lost or something like that.
Yeah. I want to say their bats got lost and they had to bus from Dallas to Wichita or something like that.
I think you're right.
And they just got their tails kicked. So we're hoping for good voodoo this time. If there's such a thing as good voodoo, I don't know. Good mojo, I guess, would be the better term. So East Carolina at Wichita State after the always fun trip to Elon on Tuesday. Brian Skipper does say, how wonder can Coach Godwin continue to coach in this climate? Look, I'm not going to doubt Cliff Godwin. After the 32-28 season, people were ready to probably rip off, and ECU after that responded with changes to how the program was ran and proceeded to go 44, 47, 44, 46, 47, 46 win total. So, yes, it's a different climate, and Cliff Godwin hates losing more than anybody. He's not going to just run it back the same. I guarantee that. I guarantee it. So we'll see what the offseason brings and the rest of the season as well. All right, bold predictions, Wags. Your 4-0 prediction is pretty bold. How can you follow that?
Yeah, well, I think in order to go 4-0, you're going to have some semblance of starting pitching this week. And I'm not going to do that disaster I did earlier this year with predicting how many innings the starting pitchers will give you. And to be quite honest with you, I have no idea who's going to start this week. I know Bradley Zayak is starting tomorrow. But after that,
we didn't even talk about that. Yeah, it's just a complete unknown at this point.
Yeah, I think to me, and I'll talk about this a little bit before I get into the bold prediction, but Brad Pruitt, I still think we're going to see him on Friday again, and I think he was so good in the rotation in the couple starts he got before that I'd be surprised if they just had one outing against a good team, a good hitting team. And you just say, all right, that's enough. But he's going to be a little fresher. He didn't throw a whole lot of pitches, but he gave up 9 runs. But I think that Pruitt is going to start again on Friday. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot. I still think Norby's a bullpen guy now, and I think ideally they want Ethan Young starting, but it's one of those things again to where if you have both of them in the bullpen, Young and Norby, then it gives you some options. So going off of that, I think one of those guys that's going to step up as a starter this weekend. We saw him this past weekend. I thought he looked really good. I thought he got pulled too early. Is Sean Jenkins. So Sean Jenkins will start a game this weekend, and he will not allow a run, is what I'm going to go with.
All right, the Sean Jenkins bold prediction. Man, I did not realize Wichita State is – like, I knew they were down, but they are 13-31. Or 13-30. That is disgusting. Bold prediction. Don't really know where to go here. We both hit last week, so this is some pressure, man. Can we make it back to back? Walker Barron hit a home run, I believe, against Wichita State in the conference tournament last year. Wasn't that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Walker Barron will hit a home run against Wichita State in the regular season this year. He only has 2 home runs this season. I mean, the guy looks tired, and, like, nobody can blame him. He has caught almost every single inning over a 44-game schedule, and I think he finds some juice this week, though. He's going to click his heels together 3 times, go back to Kansas, and drop a bomb at X Stadium or whatever the hell they call that place out in Wichita. And that's my bold prediction.
I like it.
So there it is. Any closing thoughts, Wags?
Yeah, I mean, just going off of that, maybe this is the week where they give Michael Kalinic a start at catcher and let Barron be the DH. I think
why not, right?
Yeah, Kalinic's bat has been a little bit better as of late, I think, and better in terms of his season, not compared to Barron. But, yeah, like you said, why not? And you're at a point in the season to where, yes, like we said, you're trying to win, but you do have to take at least some sort of glimpse to the future as a coaching staff. And, why not give Michael Kalinic another chance and let him start a game? Let him start 2. Who knows? And just kind of see what you have. You know what you have, but see it in a game, because catching too, it's one of those things you can practice all you want. But to me, until you get in a game situation, you're back there behind the plate with an umpire behind you and a batter in a batter's box. It's hard to gauge, how good you really are. So I'd love to see Kalinic start a game or 2 this weekend and start mixing in a start or 2 behind the plate moving forward. But, yeah, Barron just looks tired, and I do think your bold prediction will come true if Kalinic starts a game behind the plate.
I like that. Kalinic should catch versus Elon is what JPN says. He also adds Braden Burris has 2 more 4-hit games this week. That would give him, 5 on the season, which would be incredible. So there's that. All right, Wags, this has been fun. We made it through without Scott for like 45 minutes, so it shows that we can do a show without the great Scott Lohrbatcher. And I do want to remind people before we get out of here, we have activated Super Chats on our YouTube stream. So, again, next week, going to try to set up our poll, by the way, finished 50-50. Do we believe ECU has a chance to make a run in the conference tournament? So, the fan base is split. But next week, Super Chats, we're going to have a Super Chat where you can show your support for the show. All money will go to Wags and Scott as they do this as volunteers. But as a result of entering that raffle, you can win 6 free months of VIP coverage on Hoist the Colors, which is a great value. So you can Super Chat as low as like $1 or $2. So appreciate you guys for tuning in as fans. Either way, lots of great comments as always. Wags, appreciate you, man.
Yeah, it was fun. I miss Scott, but yeah, we carried the load. We were all right.
Not the same without Scott, but he's enjoying his $20 pina coladas. He'll be broke. He needs those Super Chats. All right, we got to get out of here. I've got a SEC championship game to play in EA College Football 25, so I got to go win another title. We'll see you guys next Monday night, 9 o'clock on the Hoist the Colors, Bucks on the Pond podcast. We are out.